Grant Hill responded to Jalen Rose's comments in the film where he had some Uncle Tom comments about players at Duke. Jalen talked about it on First and 10 earlier this week. Grant Hill wrote an op-ed in the New York Times. Here's part of what he had to say. Quote, "It was a sad and somewhat pathetic turn of events, therefore, to see friends calling me a bleep and worse, calling all black players at Duke Uncle Toms, and, to some degree, disparaging my parents for their education, work ethic, and commitment to each other and me. In this garbled but sweeping comment that, black players were Uncle Toms, and this Jalen seemed to change the usual meaning of those very vitriolic words into his own meaning. Blacks from two-parent, middle-class families. He leaves us all guessing exactly what he believes today." Sort of botched a little bit of reading that, Grant. I apologize for that, but you guys have seen it. What's your reaction, Chris?
Oh, this is very near and dear to my heart as someone who's very concerned about the plight of African-American people. And I want to say a few things. First, Jalen made a bad choice of words. You know, Uncle Tom's about the worst thing you can call an African-American. It's worse than the N-word. I don't like the N-word at all, but blacks call each other the N-word all the time. You don't want to call another black person Uncle Tom. Secondly, I know Jalen, as Grant alluded to, has been maybe wishy-washy about how he feels today. But when I look at Jalen, he's building a charter school in Detroit for inner-city children, mostly African-American, and I'm sure he's hoping that many of them go on to a school like Duke or go on to become, you know, get a two-parent household, married with kids like a Grant Hill. So I don't think he really feels that way today. Thirdly, Grant Hill's no Uncle Tom in any way, shape, or form. Very proud of his African-American heritage, has a great African-American and valuable African-American art collection, great role model for black people on and off the court. Now, this is the big thing. This episode between Jalen and Grant Hill, it exposes some dirty laundry in the black community. And that is that there is an identity crisis within the black community, especially among young black men, surrounding the question of what it means to really be black, to truly be a black man. And it stems back from, since we were brought to this country as slaves, our history, our culture was stolen from us. We were told we were over in Africa acting like monkeys, and then until whites graciously civilized us. And we were told that being black is synonymous with the bottom, with what's worst, with dysfunction. It was synonymous with being ignorant, with being irresponsible, with being poor, with being violent, with being subhuman. And sadly, this was not taught to one generation of blacks. This was taught to 10, 15 generations. And today, that mentality still is prevalent among many African Americans. We see it with young black children who grow up and they're speaking proper English, they're striving in school to be great students. They're derided by other blacks for acting white. When The Cosby Show was a hit, you know, Bill Cosby, a lawyer, his wife a doctor, many blacks said they're not a real black family. We hear it in hip hop. Some of the artists we've had on this show sitting in this very chair, every song they make, they promote negative, false stereotypes about black people, that an authentic black man is a pimp, a thug, a gangster, a criminal. Blacks with that mentality, that false mentality of what it means to be black. And I'm going to include an 18-year-old Jalen Rose, not a 38-year-old Jalen Rose, in that group. They look at a Grant Hill who's not showing any signs of inferiority, who's educated, who speaks well, who's from a two-parent household of Ivy League parents, and they say he's a sellout, he's an Uncle Tom, but that's because they don't really know. Their identity is messed up, and as long as black people feel that way, we're never going to be all that we can. And that's what Grant was attacking in his article.
That was eloquently said, and I appreciate everything you just said, and I defer to all of your emotions and feelings on this. But as I told Jalen Rose and Jimmy King as they sat in those seats over there, I completely understand and appreciate your resentment of what Duke stands for in the big picture. I get that. But to go all the way to labeling, condemning every black kid who a black player who chooses to go to Duke as an Uncle Tom, to me, seemed out of bounds. Because I asked them to define Uncle Tom. Maybe there's a new definition, a new way that they're looking at what an Uncle Tom is. And they said, selling out their race. I can make a case, as I think you were, that those kids choosing Duke were striving to improve their race. Okay, is that fair? Right?
The brother that's selling out the race is the one going to prison.
Okay, there
9
you
times
go.
out of 10, he got
Thank you.
children he's not raising properly because he's behind bars.
Okay, now let's get to the crux of this. There's still a stigma attached to Duke as viewed by the black community that I'm open-minded to this, sort of a perception that Duke still stands as the one elite basketball program that has over time recruited more white players than most have. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Does that cause, and even in Chris Broussard, a little bit of resentment, a little bit of?
I've never been like a Duke
Okay.
fan. They're kind of viewed like in the black community like the Boston Celtics.
Yeah,
used to
okay,
be.
there you go.
Before now Celtics
Okay.
aren't like that, but before.
Okay, that's what I was trying to tell Jimmy and Jalen. I appreciate that view, but to leap to Uncle Tom is going, to me, way out of bounds. And again, I wasn't sure how offended you would be, but clearly you're as offended as many have
I mean,
been.
I'm not mad at Jalen in any way, shape, or form, but yeah, that term, you don't want to use that, especially not in the way they used it.